The arrogant conquest, the grand chamber of the Zilanian warship. Inevitable victory hummed with the low-frequency vibrations that only a vessel of its massive size could produce. Admiral Korthak stood at the center of the tactical display, his forearms crossed in a gesture of absolute confidence. His crystalline eyes reflected the holographic star map before him, showing the Sigma sector in all its apparent vulnerability. For 300 cycles, the Zilanian Empire had expanded without meaningful resistance. Species after species had fallen before their superior technology and ruthless efficiency. Now only one sector remained between them and total dominance of this galactic arm. The reports called it the Sigma sector, supposedly protected by a species that existed only in the fevered imaginations of primitive cultures. Commander Velex approached with the latest intelligence reports, her tentacles writhing with barely contained excitement. The deep space probes had completed their scan of the sector, and the results were exactly what they had expected. Minimal defensive installations, scattered colonies of various lesser species, and no sign of any advanced military presence. The stories about humans were exactly that, just stories. The War Council had gathered around the massive tactical table, representatives from every major ship in the invasion fleet. Admiral Korthax activated the display with a thought, bringing up centuries of accumulated folklore about the mysterious humans. The tales were always the same. Impossible victories against overwhelming odds, technology that seemed to break the fundamental laws of physics, warriors who could adapt to any environment and turn anything into a weapon. Every conquered civilization had their own version of these myths. The Draconians spoke of humans who could survive in the vacuum of space with nothing but primitive suits. The Mechanoids told stories of organic beings who could outthink their quantum computers. The Hive Collective whispered about individuals who fought with the coordination of 1,000 minds, while maintaining their independence. Pure fantasy, designed to give hope to the hopeless. Strategic analyst Torin presented the invasion plan with mathematical precision. The fleet would enter the sector in a standard pyramid formation, establishing immediate space superiority. Ground forces would deploy simultaneously to 17 key worlds, securing resource centers and population hubs. The entire operation would take no more than 7 standard rotations. The lesser species would surrender once they realized their mythical protectors were nothing but shadows and lies. The Zilanian fleet was the pinnacle of military evolution. 450 vessels, each one capable of reducing a moon to rubble. Energy weapons that could pierce any known shielding. Armor plating derived from collapsed star matter. Fighter squadrons that moved in perfect synchronization through their neural link network. They had never lost a battle, never even come close to defeat. Admiral Korthax reviewed the final preparations with satisfaction. The supply lines were secure, the troops were eager for conquest, and morale was at an all-time high. The stories about humans had actually worked in their favor, making this campaign seem even more glorious. They would be the ones to finally put these ridiculous myths to rest, proving once and for all that no species could stand against the might of the Zilanian Empire. As the fleet prepared to enter hyperspace, Communications Officer Sarek reported something unusual. Several of the species in the Sigma sector were broadcasting messages, not pleas for mercy or attempts at negotiation, but warnings. They were telling the Zilanian fleet to turn back, insisting that entering the sector would trigger a response they couldn't imagine. Some even seemed to be praying, not for their own salvation but for the souls of the invaders. Admiral Korthax laughed, a sound like grinding crystal that echoed through the bridge. These primitives were so desperate that they were trying to use psychological warfare, hoping their myths would accomplish what their weapons could not. He gave the order to proceed, and the massive fleet entered hyperspace as one, racing toward what they believed would be their easiest conquest yet. The emergence from hyperspace was textbook perfect. The fleet materialized at the edge of the Sigma sector in flawless formation, sensors immediately scanning for any threats. What they found was exactly what they expected, seemingly empty space dotted with small colonies and mining operations. No defensive fleets, no battle stations, no signs of the legendary humans who supposedly protected this region. Admiral Korthax was about to give the order to advance, when something happened that his mind couldn't immediately process. Space itself seemed to ripple, like water disturbed by an invisible hand. The sensors, The most advanced detection equipment in the known galaxy suddenly went wild with readings that made no sense. Energy signatures appeared and disappeared faster than the computers could track them. Gravitational anomalies formed and dissolved in microseconds. Then they appeared. Not from hyperspace, not from behind cloaking fields, but as if reality itself had suddenly remembered they were supposed to be there. Ships of impossible design materialized around the Zilanian fleet. Some looked like they were made of liquid metal that constantly shifted and flowed. Others appeared to be constructed from pure energy held in geometric patterns that hurt to perceive. Still others seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their forms flickering between states of being. The bridge fell silent except for the frantic beeping of overwhelmed sensor arrays. Admiral Korthak stood frozen, his forearms hanging limp at his sides. His crystalline eyes struggled to focus on the impossible fleet that had surrounded them in seconds. The tactical display showed over 3,000 contacts, but the number kept changing as if the computer couldn't decide how many ships were actually there. A communication channel opened without anyone accepting it. The voice that came through was calm, almost gentle, speaking in perfect Zilanian with an accent that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The words were simple, but they shattered everything Admiral Korthax believed about the universe. Greetings, Admiral Korthax of the Zilanian Empire. I am Captain Marcus Chen of the Terran Collective. You have entered protected space with hostile intent. The species here are under our guardianship. You have one opportunity to withdraw peacefully. Please understand. The stories you've heard about us are not myths. If anything, they significantly understate our capabilities. We have no desire for conflict, but we will defend those who cannot defend themselves. The choice is yours. Admiral Korthax wanted to respond with defiance, to laugh at this obvious trick, but something in his consciousness recognized the truth. The impossible ships surrounding his fleet were real. The technology that shouldn't exist was right there before his eyes. The myths he had mocked were standing ready to demonstrate why they had persisted for so long across so many different cultures. His tactical officer reported in a voice barely above a whisper that their weapon systems couldn't achieve target lock. The enemy ship seemed to exist in a state of quantum uncertainty, being everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Their shields, the most powerful in the Empire, were being scanned by energies they couldn't identify. It felt like being examined by something so far beyond their understanding that they might as well be insects under a microscope. The impossible defense. The silence on the bridge of the inevitable victory stretched for what felt like eternity. Admiral Korthax's mind raced through every tactical scenario he had ever studied, every battle he had ever fought, and found nothing that could explain what he was witnessing. The human ships defied not just military doctrine but the fundamental laws of physics as the Zilanians understood them. Captain Marcus Chen's image appeared on the main view screen without anyone activating it. He appeared to be what the myths described as human, bipedal with 2 arms, standing upright with an almost fragile appearance compared to the 4-armed bulk of a Zilanian warrior. Yet there was something in his eyes, a depth of experience and knowledge that made Admiral Korthax feel like a child who had stumbled into a situation far beyond his comprehension. The human spoke again, his tone remaining patient and measured. Admiral, I understand your confusion. Every species reacts this way when they first encounter us directly. We've been in this galaxy for over 1,000 of your cycles, but we learned long ago that open interaction with developing civilizations causes more harm than good. So we became myths, legends, whispered stories that most species dismiss as fantasy. We only reveal ourselves when someone threatens those under our protection. Behind Captain Chen, the bridge of his ship was visible, and it was nothing like any command center Korthax had ever seen. There were no visible controls, no tactical displays, no crew stations. Humans seemed to be standing or sitting wherever they pleased. Some were even floating in mid-air, their eyes closed as if in meditation. Yet somehow Korthax knew this seemingly chaotic arrangement was operating with perfect efficiency. Commander Velix found her voice first, her tentacles writhing in agitation. This is impossible. Our sensors show your ships are made of materials that shouldn't exist. They're reading as solid matter, pure energy, and empty space all at the same time. How can something be everything and nothing simultaneously? A smile crossed Captain Chen's face, an expression that somehow conveyed both amusement and sympathy. You're thinking in 3 dimensions, Commander. The universe has at least 11 that we've discovered so far, possibly more. Your ships, as impressive as they are, only operate in the basic 3. We learned to navigate all of them. What you're seeing is just the part of our vessels that intersects with your perceptual framework. To demonstrate, one of the human ships suddenly split into 12 identical copies, each one as real and solid as the original according to the sensors. Then they merged back together, becoming one again. The Zilanian fleet's computers crashed and rebooted 3 times trying to process what they had just witnessed. Admiral Korthax finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a croak. The stories say you're warriors without equal, that you've never lost a battle. Yet you hide in the shadows protecting species that don't even know you exist. Why? With power like this, you could rule the galaxy. Captain Chen's expression grew serious, and for a moment Korthax glimpsed something ancient and terrible in those seemingly gentle eyes. We tried that once long ago on our own world. We nearly destroyed ourselves and our planet in the process. When we finally reached the stars, we made a choice. Power without wisdom is meaningless. Strength without compassion is just brutality. We became guardians, not conquerors. The human paused, then continued with a tone that suggested he was sharing a profound truth. Every species in this sector has the potential for greatness. The Altarians will one day develop mathematics that will revolutionize faster than light travel. The Kepler colonies will create art that will bring peace to warrior cultures. The mining worlds you are about to conquer will discover elements that will cure diseases that haven't even emerged yet. We protect that potential. Suddenly, alarms began blaring across the Zilanian fleet. Not attack warnings, but system failures. Every weapon on every ship had simultaneously powered down. The engines were still functional, but only in reverse. They could retreat, but not advance. The life support systems remained perfect, even improving slightly, providing a more comfortable environment than before. Strategic analyst Torin frantically worked his console, trying to understand what had happened. Admiral, they didn't hack our systems or use any form of electronic warfare we can detect. It's as if the ships themselves have decided they don't want to fight. The molecular structure of our weapons has been altered at the quantum level. They're perfectly intact but functionally inert. Captain Chen nodded as if he had heard the report. We don't believe in destroying when we can disable, Admiral. Your weapons will return to normal once you leave the sector. Consider this a demonstration of the difference between myth and reality. The stories say we're unbeatable in battle. The truth is we don't need to battle at all. Admiral Korthax felt his entire worldview crumbling. Everything the Zilanian Empire had built, everything they had achieved through force and conquest was meaningless in the face of this level of advancement. But more than that, he began to understand that these humans weren't just technologically superior. They had evolved past the need for conquest itself. A new figure appeared beside Captain Chen, a woman who introduced herself as Ambassador Sarah Martinez. Her presence seemed to radiate calm, and even through the view screen, the Zilanian bridge crew felt their anxiety diminishing. Admiral Korthax, we're offering you something more valuable than conquest. Knowledge, partnership, evolution. The Zilanian Empire has incredible potential. Your understanding of hyperspace mechanics is actually more advanced than ours was at your stage of development. Your neural link technology could, with some refinement, allow for true collective consciousness while maintaining individuality. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared showing the galaxy from a perspective Korthax had never seen. Instead of territories and borders, it showed flows of potential, currents of development, and nodes of emerging consciousness. This is how we see the galaxy, Admiral. Not as something to be conquered, but as a garden to be tended. Every species brings something unique to the collective tapestry of life. The Zilanians could be incredible gardeners if you chose to be. The offer hung in the air like a temporal anomaly, existing outside the normal flow of cause and effect. Admiral Korthax could feel the weight of decision pressing down on him. Continue with the invasion and face beings who had transcended the very concept of warfare, or accept that everything his culture had believed about strength and dominance was fundamentally flawed. His communications officer reported that messages were flooding in from across the Empire. Somehow this entire encounter was being broadcast to every Zilanian world simultaneously. The population was watching their invincible fleet being gently but firmly turned away by beings they had dismissed as myth. But more than that, they were seeing an alternative to endless conquest, a path they had never imagined possible. Admiral Korthax looked at his crew, seeing his own transformation reflected in their eyes. The hunger for conquest was being replaced by curiosity. The desire to dominate was giving way to a need to understand. He thought of all the species they had conquered, worlds stripped of resources, cultures destroyed in the name of expansion. For the first time in his life, he felt something his people had no word for: remorse. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice carrying a weight of history. "If we withdraw, if we cease our expansion and return to our space, would humanity be willing to share this knowledge? Could the Zelanian Empire become something more than conquerors?" The human smile was warm and genuine. "Admiral, that question itself shows you've already begun the transformation. Humanity will gladly share what we've learned, but remember, we're not teachers, we're fellow students. Every species has something to contribute to the greater understanding." The Sigma Sector species you were about to conquer? They've been developing philosophies of peace that even we're still learning from. As if to emphasize the point, representatives from various Sigma Sector species appeared on secondary screens. Instead of fear or anger toward their would-be conquerors, they showed concern and compassion. They were worried about the Zelanians, about what choosing violence had cost them spiritually and culturally. It was a complete inversion of everything Korthax had expected. The Admiral made his decision. With great ceremony, he deactivated his command codes and turned his fleet around. As they began to withdraw, something extraordinary happened. The human ships formed an honor guard, not to ensure they left, but to show respect for the choice they had made. It was the kind of gesture warriors gave to other warriors who had chosen wisdom over pride. As the Zelanian fleet prepared to enter hyperspace, one final transmission came through from Captain Chen. "Admiral, the myths about humanity will continue to spread as they serve a purpose. But now you know the truth. We're not gods or monsters, we're just a species that learned some hard lessons and chose to use them wisely. The same opportunity is now yours. Welcome to the real galaxy, where the greatest strength is knowing when not to use it." The inevitable victory entered hyperspace, but for Admiral Korthax it felt like emerging into real space for the first time. The universe was suddenly larger, more complex, and infinitely more wonderful than he had ever imagined. The myths about humans were wrong. The reality was far more impressive. They weren't unbeatable warriors. They were something far more powerful, evolved beings who had transcended the need for war itself. As news of the encounter spread throughout the Zelanian Empire, a transformation began. Military academies started teaching philosophy alongside tactics. Scientists began exploring dimensions beyond the basic three. Artists started creating works that celebrated life rather than conquest. The empire that had risen through force began to evolve through wisdom. And in the Sigma Sector, life continued as it always had, protected by guardians who preferred to remain myths. The various species went about their daily lives, developing, growing, and contributing to the galactic garden in their own unique ways. Occasionally, someone would claim to have seen a human ship, but most dismissed these as fantasy. After all, everyone knew humans were just a myth,